But the point is I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning and I was scared, but I took that risk. I started small and it ended up being greater than I ever could have imagined. But if I never would have taken that risk, that first step, none of this would have happened.
Welcome to the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast, where you will learn how to remix your mompreneur life so that you can win at work without losing yourself in the process. Hi, my name is Martine Williams, and I am your host and CEO, your Chief Encouragement Officer. And this podcast is your one-stop shop to creating a burnout-proof life and business and elevating your clarity, confidence, and courage. Friends, it's time to say goodbye to being the yes girl and hello to creating healthy boundaries, healthy mindsets, and healthy habits. Your next breakthrough starts here. This is the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast. Let's do this. Hey friends, summer's coming, and just like we do some preparations for summer with maybe working out a little bit more, maybe eating a little cleaner to get our bodies ready for summer, I want to help you get your business ready for summer. So last week, I held a virtual workshop called the Summer Ready Success Workshop, and I had such great feedback from this, and maybe you missed it. And so I wanted to let you know that I have the replay up for you to go and watch, go and learn how to have balance with your family, with your self-care, with your just busy summer schedule, have strategies to boost your productivity and maximize your summer success. So you want to go to martinewilliams.com/summer. And this is where you're going to be able to watch the virtual training. You have a guide that goes along with it to help you actually implement the strategies that you learn. So again, go to martinewilliams.com/summer and let's get you summer ready for success. Hey friends, I'm excited for you to dive into this episode today with a Turquoise Talk guest, MK Stahl. We had a great conversation. Like, she is just so easy to talk to. And we talk about boundaries. If you've ever struggled with boundaries, I think you're going to love our discussion around setting internal boundaries as well. So maybe a little different perspective on that. She is super passionate about helping moms see that they can be both a successful mom and a successful entrepreneur. So she is a 7-figure earner through business ownership. She's a fitness entrepreneur, podcast host, and speaker, and a spokesperson for the Fit Body Boot Camp brand. So excited for you to meet MK. So let's dive in. Well, welcome back, friends, to the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. I'm your host and CEO, Martine Williams, and I'm really excited about today's Turquoise Talk guest, MK, coming on, and we're just going to be talking about mompreneur life and entrepreneurship. And, I love bringing on guests because each person's story can be so impactful. You've heard my story over the last 2 years here on the podcast, but bringing on Turquoise Talk guests, other mompreneurs who are building businesses and trying to juggle all of the things that we do as mompreneurs. So MK, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So we're just kind of getting to know each other as well. So tell me a little bit about you, your family, and what really is your journey to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I live in Roanoke, Virginia, born and raised. I'm a mom to 2 littles. I have Sophia, who's 5, and Stone, who is 2. And prior to having them, I actually started my fitness business journey, and I grew my family, grew my business at the same time, which we all know, like, just doing one of those by itself is challenging. However, it's been a journey that I have absolutely loved. And how it started out is I started as a client at Fit Body Boot Camp about 7 years ago. A good friend of mine invited me. It was, a new gym in town, and I had never been to a group fitness studio place before. I'd really just gone to big box gyms. I was pretty self-motivated, but I was looking for something different. Mm-hmm. And so within just a few weeks of going to boot camp, it became the best part of my day. And I just kept talking about it to everybody. And I loved the way it made me, not only the way it made me look, but the way it made me feel, the way it helped me show up. And so I looked into ownership. And then several months later, I opened up my first studio in Blacksburg, Virginia. And to date, I've opened 3 locations, and I'm now the master franchisor for South Carolina. So I help other people open locations within the state. And then I also work for the Fit Body Bootcamp brand as the community manager. And I'm kind of like that middle person between our 250 locations
Mhm.
and HQ, which is over in California. So I am the face of the people in the studios. And I try to connect with all of our members. And it's been a journey. It's been a great one.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm sure like over your journey, there have been some things you wish you would have known, like you know now that you wish you would have known when you first started. I know there's a lot of mompreneurs that are maybe this is the year, like they're gonna go from being the client to being like the owner, right? And in a community or in a business, or maybe they just want to start their own business. What are some things like that you wish you would have known on your
Oh
way to
gosh.
the top?
That's such a great question. Well, I will mention just for our listeners, like I did start this journey when I was really young. I was
Hmm.
26, 27 years old. And so I didn't have a lot of leadership experience.
Mm,
I didn't have any business experience.
yeah,
And while I was doing something that I loved, there were some challenging times that during that time, it felt so permanent, but it was temporary pain that I was experiencing. And looking back, there are some decisions that I made that were based on temporary feelings that were
yeah.
permanent decisions that I couldn't come back from. And so I would say, looking back, if I could, tell myself, what was going to happen and give myself any advice, it would be that there are going to be seasons of whether it's in your business or whether it's in your motherhood journey that are going to feel really, really hard. And they're going to feel permanent, but they're not. It's just a
Hmm.
season.
Yeah.
So don't make any permanent decisions based on temporary feelings.
Hmm.
And I did a lot of that, but you live and you learn. And so that's definitely one of the things.
Yeah. Yeah. They have heard me say here on the podcast many times that, we either get the result we wanted or the lesson we need. And I
Mhm.
think in entrepreneurship, if we can keep that mindset, then you don't feel, especially as women, I think we take every mistake as a personal failure. Like we're a failure, we're failing, we're doing all the things wrong. And I have just learned to really adopt that mindset of being an entrepreneur for 17 years that, I'm just learning ways that things aren't working right when something doesn't work. And so I love that you brought that up to just, feelings are temporary. They're not always permanent and they're all hard. Like you have littles, mine are 19 and 16 right now, and parenting teens is hard too, right? So it's just a different kind of hard.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think too, like you don't know what you're capable of until like you're on that other side of the challenge. So for
Yeah.
example, like when you're going through something that seems like it's going to break you and you
Mm-hmm.
make it through, you then
Mm-hmm.
look back and you're like, whoa, I'm stronger because of that challenge.
Yeah.
And again, in that time, it feels like, oh my gosh, how am I going to make it through? Should I stop doing this? Like some entrepreneurs, especially like if you grew your family and you're growing your business at the same time like I did, there have been so many times where I have wanted to throw my hands up in the air and say, I have 2 little kids. They require all my attention. I shouldn't do this business right now. I shouldn't do this. This is selfish of me. I need to walk away from this. I need to just take care of my family. And
Mm-hmm.
if I would have done that, and some people do, like who knows what would have happened, but I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I just stuck with it and I just
Yeah.
carried it through because I know that for moms, like you're going to come at that crossroads. You're going to have that crossroads in your life and it's going to be hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why having community is so important, right?
Mm.
Having the right people. They say it takes a village, like having the
Oh
right
yeah.
people in your village, right? You can have a village full of people and it not be the right ones who are feeding a positive mindset or supporting you and kind of calling you out when you're in your own head about things. And so I think that's super important. And why podcasting? I mean, honestly, some of my best mentors have come from listening to podcasts. And it
Yeah.
blows my mind the number of people who are not taking advantage of this free resource and
Right.
listening to podcasts. It's free. Put it in while you're doing laundry. Put it in while you're driving down the road. Like there's no excuse in my mind for not personally developing. I mean, there's just there's content everywhere, right? There's information everywhere, but then it's like, you got to do something with that information. And that's where the community helps, or having a
Yeah.
coach helps, or yeah. So challenges as a mom and an entrepreneur, and people hear me say on here on the podcast all the time, you can be absolutely both. And I think sometimes we have this mindset of, well, I have to be one or the other, or I can't be a successful mom and a successful entrepreneur. And you and I both are living proof that it's possible, but it does present challenges. So what are some of the challenges in balancing both motherhood and entrepreneurship have you kind of come across and overcome?
Yeah. The number one for me is just the constant connection and the stimulation of it all. So like for
Mm,
me, and you're probably the same, like I do a lot of my work from home. And
yeah.
so, I'm on my computer, I'm on my phone, I'm on social media, I'm connecting with people over all the platforms. And it can completely consume your day from the time you wake up. And it doesn't matter what time it is,
Yeah.
until you go to bed at night. And I will say that when my daughter's 5.5. So when she was about 2 years old, I did start to notice how that was affecting me, being constantly connected to everybody and everything and
Yeah.
being available.
Yeah.
So my downfall was that I made myself available to my team, to my clients, whoever needed me. I made myself available 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
I did start to experience that little bit of burnout because I was over it. I
Yeah.
wanted to be able to like shut it all off and
Mm-hmm.
have that connection and time with my daughter. And so when my son was born, I realized like, oh, I really have to make some boundaries here. I have to set some boundaries with people. And they don't actually have to be like, for the listeners, like that maybe you feel like this when we say boundaries, you hear people talk about boundaries a lot. You don't actually have to be like, all right, here's my rules. I'm going to write them out for you and
Yeah.
I'm going to post them up so everybody can see. You can set unspoken boundaries internally with yourself. An example would be like, okay, I'm not going to look at my phone from 4 to 7 because
Yeah.
between 4 and 7, I'm going to play with my kids. We're going to have dinner. We're going to do bath. We're going to read. We're going to do all those things. From 4 to 7, I'm not going to check my phone. I don't need to tell anybody I'm not checking my phone, but I'm just not
Yeah.
going to check it. And then when they go to bed, maybe you allow yourself 30 minutes to do that. But I had to get really clear with myself when it came to those boundaries on like what I could realistically set so that I could experience joy with my
Mm-hmm.
children, but then also experience joy when I was away from them, so that I felt super productive when I was working. And so I
Yeah.
would say like that is probably the number one thing for me is just that constant connection with people. It
Yeah.
can really overwhelm you. And that's what I do believe leads to burnout for a lot of
Yeah.
entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Always being on, I mean, there have been so many days that I'm sure you've experienced this too, where you just want to throw the towel in on entrepreneurship because you're like, it'd be so much easier to go somewhere and punch a clock and clock in and clock out because as entrepreneurs, you're always on. I mean, your brain is always trying to think of ways to grow the business. And then as a mom, you're like, okay, I got to do this and I got to do this. And it can be absolutely exhausting. And to your point of burnout, that's where it happens, is
Right.
this constant feeling the need. No one's telling you to do this. It's all self-inflicted, right? We're the ones that are putting those expectations on ourselves to be and do all things and be, all things and all things to people, to everyone. And so it really is clear. I love the thought of what are your internal boundaries, that you're going to set for yourself. And then what are the triggers that are going to remind you of that? Like I use my phone. It's funny. I was out with some girlfriends the other night and she wanted me to go on my phone and look at something. Well, I have a 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. rule set on my phone to where the apps shut down. I know I can give myself permission just like you would a
Right.
child to do, but for me, it's a trigger to remind me, like, I really want to shut off at 8 p.m. at night so I can, do whatever I need to do. My kids are older, so like they're still up. And they really don't want anything to do with me before then anyway. So seasons change, right, with kids. And then in the morning, like I want to protect that morning time that I'm going to be doing my devotional time or my workouts and not be the first thing I do is look at my phone. So those are just some really simple boundaries that I've set for myself. But then also the expectation to just wake up one day and be able to do those things. You have to set up triggers to create some of those new habits, right? To help you with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, like all of those things that like the piece that we want to protect by setting those boundaries, it doesn't just happen overnight. Like you have to
Mm-hmm.
start making baby steps. Like I
Yeah.
know for you saying that you don't get on your phone from 8 to 8, that's great. And like right now, I'm really working on shutting the phone off at 8 o'clock at night. But in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still pretty bad. Like I'll wake up and I'll check the email right away when
Mm-hmm.
I should be doing my devotion first and like doing the exercise first, doing all the things first before I check the emails. But
Yeah.
that's a process. I'm a work in progress. And
Yeah.
so I think like it's just worth noting that these are not things that are just going to happen overnight. Like you
Yeah.
have to practice and
Yeah.
it takes time.
Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of shame comes in. Like even you just saying, I should be. I talk about this a lot on the podcast is that, shoulding is shaming. And when you're
Right.
saying, I should be further along in my business or I should be not checking my emails, like you're really producing the emotion of shame for yourself. And I don't know anyone that's producing success and meaningful success and long lasting success when they're feeling shame. Right. And so changing the verbiage a little bit also that how we speak to ourselves. I was having a conversation with one of my coaching clients the other day. I'm like, if this was your 5-year-old child, would you be saying the same thing to this 5-year-old child that you're saying to yourself? And it was just like this, her mind was just like, I would never say that to him. If he was trying something new and he kept messing up or he wasn't doing it right, I would try to be encouraging and be kind and gentle to him. And as mompreneurs, we have to speak that same language to ourselves and be kind. And, when you're trying to create new habits and you're like you said, we're all a work in progress. You never arrive. For all the mompreneurs out there that think there's a finish line, there's not. I mean, it's a journey, right? The finish line is not until you're no longer on this earth. It's a new starting line. And the new starting line is in different seasons of your life. So be kind to yourself. And I think, you know, we hang out where we are celebrated, not tolerated. And I don't know about you, but my kids aren't like coming in the door going, Mom, you're a great mom, and celebrating the tar out of me, right? But I feel great when I'm on social and I know I'm making an impact on social and I know that my clients are getting results with the coaching that we're doing. And so that I feel celebrated. So it's natural for us to just want to hang out there all the time. So that's
Yeah.
where a lot of the mom guilt comes in too, is why am I so drawn to that and not wanting to sit down and do a board game with my kids? And
Mm.
so, we have to release that mom guilt too. I'm sure you've experienced mom guilt.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I love that you point that out because I actually had a coach tell me recently, I proposed the question in a mastermind group that I'm in. I said, listen, what happens when you experience mom guilt? That's not guilt like when you're away from your kids, but it's the guilt that you feel when you are with them, but you're
Mm-hmm.
not feeling as happy as you thought you would or as
Mm-hmm.
happy as you want to feel. And
Yeah.
he said, well, let me ask you a question. When do you feel happiest? When can you tell me a time or tell me a moment that makes you really happy? And
Yeah.
so we all started sharing, what makes us happy. And for me, like I love, building businesses and helping people with their fitness business. And that really fills my cup. It gets me fired up. And he said, okay, you have been trained to love that. You love that feeling. You've done it for, 5, 6 years now. He said, every time you sit in the floor and you do that puzzle,
Mm-hmm.
you have not been trained to love to do a puzzle with your 2-year-old. He's
Yes.
like, he's like, you haven't like done that over and over, and you haven't
Yeah.
had like great success with it, like you have with your business. He's like, it's totally normal not to feel that way. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, but as long as you recognize that and you go into that, puzzle time with your child and say to yourself, like, I want to be present. I want to experience joy in this. He said, it's going to get easier. And it
Mm-hmm.
really got me thinking because we do talk about mom guilt a lot because
Mm-hmm.
moms, working moms, we feel like, oh, I feel guilty for traveling for work or being away from my child, from taking them to daycare. But we don't talk a lot about the fact that, okay, I'm with my kid all day, but maybe mentally I'm not here or I don't
Yeah.
want to be here. I want to be somewhere else. And
Yeah.
I think we all experience that. It's just we don't talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't really know how to pinpoint what that feeling is.
Yeah. Hey, friend, can I give you permission today? like for real, your own permission slip. Permission to get clear, to cut out the noise, mostly the noise that is going on around in your own mind, in your own head. It's just swirling. And you're asking yourself questions like, why am I stuck? Why am I frustrated? Why am I not making progress on my goals? I want to invite you to a free clarity call with me where we're going to dive in and we're going to identify what are the three main issues that are keeping you stuck. Number two, what are the mindsets around those issues that are actually keeping you from solving for those issues? It's not our skill sets, it's our mindsets that keep us stuck and hold us back. And then number three, identifying what are your next steps? We all have a next step and we have 100% responsibility for those next steps. Your only next step right now is to go to the show notes and book your free clarity call so that we can work through this. I'm believing in you and I cannot wait to see you on our clarity call. Well, because it brings a lot of shame because for some people, they love that stuff. Like, that's where that comparison trap comes in, where you're comparing how you mother and what motherhood looks like for you to the other mompreneur. Just like we compare our businesses, we also compare the fact that I don't get joy out of making lunches and cutting their sandwich in the shape of a heart or a dinosaur and putting a note in it. Like maybe the note, because I am a words of affirmation, love language, but like all of the other stuff, like that does not bring me any joy. Right. And so I used to shame myself or feel guilty that I didn't have that same drive to do those things with my kids. And my coach said to me one time, because I was really working through mom guilt, and she's like, you just need to schedule it in. Like if you schedule it in, it'll get done. I'm like, that seems so wrong that as a mom, I have to schedule in time with my kids. And she's like, but is it getting done? And I said, yes. And she said, so that's most important right now is that you're actually there and present. And then it'll come, it may come a little more natural. You might start finding some of the joy, kind of like what your coach was saying. But, we have to just schedule those things in the beginning. If not, it won't get in because you're going to naturally default to, like you said, what fires you up, what fuels you. That's where you're going to want to spend a lot of your time. And it's not that you don't love your kids. It's just different for you, as an ambitious, driven woman. And that's okay. Doesn't mean you don't love your kids.
No. And I think too, entrepreneurs, like most entrepreneurs, we struggle with being present and still in the moment. Like we're always working on something.
Yeah.
And so even my husband and I were talking about this the other day. I find that I get very sleepy on the weekends. And here's why. Because on the weekends, I don't work as much and I surrender to just being a mom for the weekend. We sit around and we play with the toys and stuff. And I'm like, why am I so tired? It's because it's actually mentally draining for me to just not be doing anything else and sit there and play Barbies for 3 hours. It really is. It really is. I actually have more energy if I have like 3 podcasts and have to go meet with a client and do all of this work.
Yeah.
And you can sit around feeling guilty about it, or you could just recognize it and move on and be as present as you can and do the best that you can. Because there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah. That's the thing I love about the work I do with my clients with the Pro Scan. You're probably not familiar with the Pro Scan, but it's a personality and performance survey. And it actually will tell you like what your natural strengths are of your personality and what your capacity for energy is and where you draw your energy from and, what are the stressors in your life. And it's always so eye-opening for my clients when they see what you just said, like doing less actually takes more energy away from me. Or when I'm in a low, when I'm not around a lot of people, if they have high extroversion in their personality, then it's actually draining when they are in solitude or when they're not around people on a regular basis. And so that's just really important for you to know. So you can stop shaming yourself and stop feeling guilty and just realize this is how I was created. Like this is me and this is how I naturally operate. So instead of shaming it, how can we optimize those strengths and just be aware of those things and create the life and the business that we want from a place of confidence, not trying to prove one way or the other. So
I love that. Yeah. And something I've noticed now that my kids are starting to get out of that baby phase, it's easier to do more. And so like just the other day, it was a nice day. So like, okay, let's go outside. Let's start pulling weeds. Let's do some things around the house that need to get done. And we made like a really fun activity with it. And I was like, okay, I feel energized right now because like I'm doing something that needs to get done and I'm involving you. And
Yeah.
so I think the more I can do of that, the better off I am. And like for any of the listeners who might feel like this, if your kids are starting to get to that age where they can help, like my
Mm-hmm.
kids love to help. And actually like over in like Europe, they say like that's the best type of parenting is to get
Yeah.
your kids involved
Mm-hmm.
with the day-to-day tasks that you have to do because it teaches them a lot. It teaches them about independence as well. And so I think like the more I can do of that, the less, drained of my energy I feel.
Yeah, 100%. And just realizing that what works for MK or what works for me may not be that what works for you. Just be curious. Like you have to come from this like curious energy around, what is that going to look like for me? And not compare what I should be like her. I should be, pulling weeds with my kids. Or maybe you hate gardening. So that might not be the thing for you, right? But it's just figuring those things out and realizing that it's not a one size fits all. Motherhood is not a one size fits all. And I think there's a lot of pressure out there in culture to fit into a certain mold. And you have to just learn to celebrate who you are and who you were created to be and what you were created to do. It's not always going to be the same as someone else. And we can say
Right.
that. And it's hard to live that out with so much that we can see around with social. That's the like what double-edged sword of social is you can get so many great connections, but then you can fall into that comparison trap and kind of spiral down. So tell me a little bit about, if there's someone who's listening and maybe they're in corporate right now or they're out in the workforce, but they have this passion or maybe they don't even know what they want to do, but they just want to start something. They want to get out of corporate. What would be some advice for you for a mom who's maybe wanting to start a business but she's out in corporate right now?
Yeah. So I think first you need to look at or define what your core values are.
Mm,
So for me, like I have to make sure that any opportunity that I am going to explore really aligns with my values and the values that I have for my family. So, if you're looking at starting your own business, how is that going to serve you? Or even if you're looking at making a career move, how
mm-hmm,
is that going to serve you when it comes to your values? Like, is it going to, if you really value spending quality time with your family, is it going to allow you to spend quality time with your family? If you love traveling, is this new opportunity going to allow you to travel? Is it going to check all the boxes? I would first start there. And then the second step I would really look at is like if you're at that crossroads where you're thinking, I want to start my own business, I want to make a change, but
mm-hmm,
you're really scared. You're really scared to take that risk. I want you to ask yourself, would you be happy looking back on your life if you never took that opportunity, if you never took
mm-hmm.
that risk? Would you be happy with the way your life turned out? Because if you are saying, no, I'm not going to be happy if I don't explore this opportunity, and if it's something that you keep circling back to,
Yeah.
then you need to just give it a go. And I mean, I am a risk taker. I really am. Not that I don't, calculate everything before I take a risk and make sure that I weigh my pros and cons, but I firmly do believe that if it's something that you keep circling back to, it's something that you keep thinking about. And if
Mm-hmm,
you're not a little bit scared, then it
mm-hmm.
probably isn't worth it. You're always going to be a little bit scared. You're going to feel nervous. But if you keep coming back to it, you
Yeah.
owe yourself to explore that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you said explore because it's not like, oh, I've got this all figured out and,
Right.
this business is all put together. And, so many of us just want to like land in the middle of a successful business. And that's just, not how it works. So you have to just kind of explore, like you say, and some things may be a fit and some may not be a fit. And so just taking that next step without the perfect plan, I always say imperfect action before the perfect plan is in place is going to give you more clarity and give you more confidence and give you more courage to keep taking those next steps.
That's exactly right. And like I have two examples of this. So when I started my first Fit Body Bootcamp location, I had no money. So like I had very, very little money to get this started. And I mean, I remember these conversations. I mean, I was 26 years old. My parents were like, you finally have a job with a salary to pay your bills. Like, why do you want to do this? And my husband, we had just gotten married. Like we were newlyweds. We just bought our first house. Like seriously, had no money for an opportunity
Yeah.
like this. But we figured it out. And so what we did, because we had very little money, is we found an old yoga studio that was really small and they were moving to a new location. And so all we needed to do was come in and paint the walls. And my mom and dad came in, they helped us paint the whole place. And it's still a joke today. Every time I open a studio, my dad says, "I'm not painting. You've done well now. You can hire your own painter." And we came in and we ordered like the bare minimum when it came to equipment. We just wanted to get open. And so once we did, within 6 months, we completely outgrew the space. We had wait lists on all of our sessions. We had to find a space that was twice the size, completely renovate it. But the point is I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning and I was scared, but I
Yeah.
took that risk. I started small and it ended up being greater than I ever could have imagined. But if I never would have taken that risk, that first step, none of
Hmm.
this would have happened. And then
Yeah.
the second example of that is during COVID, which, we were all in that, like, we were living in fear of everything during
Yeah.
COVID. Someone came to me and said, "I'm going to close my Fit Body Bootcamp down because I can't do it anymore. Do you want to buy my location from me?" And he had 30 members because all the gyms were closed down in our area.
Yeah. Yeah.
So not many people wanted to pay for a gym that they couldn't go to. So he was only able to retain like 30 people that were still committed to the gym, even though it wasn't operating at the time. And that was a huge risk that I took. I said, "You know what? I think that when we're on the other
Yeah.
side, I think that I can turn this place around." And so I did. And I came in and I coached every single session by myself until I had enough members that I could pay for other people to coach some of the sessions. And we were able to turn that location around. And it became very successful. But if I
Yeah.
never would have taken that risk, who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah.
And so I just think that like you have to have a little bit of fear
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
going in to a new opportunity. But if you believe in yourself and it's something that you're excited about and you keep coming back to it, you
Hmm.
owe it to yourself to just explore, just
Yeah.
try and see
Yeah.
what happens.
Yeah. I love that. I so remember all the gyms around here and just the whole world, right? Like, did we really
Yeah.
just live through that? Like, it's really hard to believe that we all just went through that, and there's
Right.
so much that has happened within people, I think, because of that season of life for everyone, in our country and in our world. So we're still seeing, some of the side effects, I think, of that
Right.
today. But I love that because, I like to say like our emotions are messengers, right? And a lot of times we like to avoid the emotion.
Right.
Instead, just like if you're out running errands and your kid decides to have a temper tantrum, you don't just leave them on the side of the road or on the store. Like you buckle them in safely in the back of the car. They're going to go on the ride with you, but they're not driving, right? You're still going to go and get your errands done. So fear
Right.
is going to be there. So let's just buckle it up safely in the car seat, in the back seat, but we don't have to let it drive our behavior and we don't have to be afraid of it. Be afraid of feeling those emotions. Like just welcome them in. They're there, put in the back seat, all safe and sound, but they're not going to drive what we do.
Yeah. And I think the more that you don't listen to your emotions and like
Mhm.
the things that you want to do in life, the more that you like say, "Nope, I'm not even going to explore that. I'm not even going to try that." You actually become like numb. And
Yeah.
so you paralyze all of your feelings and ambitions and you bottle it up inside of you so that, and when you do that for too long, you never end up stepping outside of your comfort zone. And I think
Hmm.
that's one thing that many people did during COVID. And even
Yeah.
today, like still, I see so many, especially females that are moms, they want to explore these opportunities. They want
Hmm.
to start the business. They want to, switch careers, do something different with their life, but they're so scared of getting uncomfortable. And the
Yeah.
more you can get uncomfortable and get comfortable with feeling like that,
Yeah.
so much greatness on the other side.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. If we're willing to feel anything, we're willing to do anything. So we
Right.
can't avoid those emotions that are going to come along with it. Well, tell me as we wrap up, like, what are you most excited about right now in your own business and your own journey?
Yeah, so right now I'm really on a mission to help other fitness professionals open their own Fit Body Bootcamp locations. I have a podcast called Beyond the Scale, and we talk about fitness, mindset, nutrition, all of the things. But what we also talk about is fitness business ownership.
Mhm.
And I work for Fit Body Bootcamp as the community manager, as I mentioned earlier. And I am on a mission to help other people that want to impact more lives and help other people. I'm on a mission to help them start their own studios. So that's what I'm really passionate about right now. So if you're a listener and you have thought about opening your own studio, I would love to work with you. I know it seems scary. It seems like a huge undertaking, but I promise if I can do it, you can do it. And the cool thing about joining a fitness franchise like FitBody is that we have an entire team that helps with everything from finding your location to building out the location to marketing to getting your first 100 clients. We have a whole team that helps you along your journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we'll put links to, is there places like a website? We'll put all that in the show notes, but do you want to just audibly let people know
Yeah.
where they can find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at marykatherinestahl.com and on Instagram and Facebook at Mary Katherine Stahl, and then also fitbodybootcamp.com.
Okay. Awesome. We'll put all that in the show notes. Thank you so much, MK, for coming on. This was a great conversation. I know everyone is going to just love I think the realness and the rawness of the things that you shared and resonate so much with your story and the things that you're sharing. And who knows, maybe somebody in South Carolina is going to be opening up a Fit Body Boot Camp here pretty soon. So thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
All right, friends, I'll catch you on the next episode. Well, that's a wrap, friends. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I really hope it met you right where you are and gave you some encouragement for your day. Could you do me the biggest favor and leave me a rating and review? Seriously, it's the best way for you to support the show. And while you're there, be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Thanks again. And until next time, I am believing in you always.